Welcome to Starbound. My name is General G, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Freyr and Remeke. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes in future series, tap Join below to become a Starbound member. Now, let's get into today's story. The first thing Matthias Torvin noticed wasn't the sirens. It was the taste of copper in his mouth, and the way his lungs burned with each shallow breath. Then came the shriek of alarms, drilling through the cryogenic fog that still clung to his thoughts like wet concrete. His eyes snapped open. Frost spiderwebbed across the hibernation pod's viewport, obscuring the world beyond. The display panel beside his head flashed a stark red. Critical environmental failure. Reflex took over before conscious thought. His fingers found the emergency release, his numb joints fumbling as if they belonged to someone else. The pod seal broke with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Cool air rushed in, not the regulated chill of proper awakening protocols, but something sharper. Wrong. He forced himself upright, muscles screaming in protest. The human habitat module stretched before him, bathed in emergency lighting that painted everything the color of old blood. His breath misted. Too cold. Far too cold. The dormitory viewing window drew him forward on unsteady legs. The sight through it made his stomach drop into freefall. 53 hibernation pods stood in neat rows, each one dark. Not the gentle blue of active suspension, or even the amber of standby mode. Dark. Ice crystals coated their surfaces like funeral shrouds. No. The word came out as vapor in the frozen air. He stumbled to the nearest terminal. The screen flickered to life, displaying data that confirmed what his gut already knew. Coolant system failure. Atmospheric venting. Temperature dropped to minus 60 Celsius. Time of incident? 3 hours, 14 minutes ago. During the FTL jump, when they were all supposed to be safely unconscious. All except him. A secondary diagnosis showed why. A faulty seal on his pod's coolant intake had saved his life through sheer mechanical failure. The Nemerian. The thought struck him with a perfect, terrible clarity. Their alien partners, who'd worked alongside them for months, who'd shared meals in the common room and swapped stories about their respective homeworlds. They'd done this. The coolant redirection was too deliberate, too targeted at the human section to be an accident. Another alarm joined the cacophony. O2 levels dropping. His pod's emergency reserves were depleting fast. 20 minutes, maybe less. Matthias forced his breathing to slow, counting each inhale. Panic would burn through his oxygen faster than anything else. Think. Work the problem. He grabbed an emergency suit from the wall locker, sealing it around himself. The suit's heads-up display flickered online. 21 minutes of air. He snatched a toolkit and headed for the corridor. The blast bolts on the emergency bulkhead were his only option. They'd been designed for catastrophic decompression scenarios, not betrayal. But physics didn't care about intent. He placed the charges, wired the detonator, and took cover. The explosion rang through the module like a bell. The bulkhead tore free, venting the poisoned atmosphere into space and opening his path to the rest of the station. He moved, magnetic boots clanging against the deck as he pushed through the violent outrush of air. The independent garden module lay just beyond the human section, its own life support running on a separate system. He sealed the emergency hatch behind him and cycled the airlock. When the inner door opened, humid air hit him like a wall. He tore off his helmet and gulped down lungfuls of green-scented oxygen. The sudden quiet pressed in on him, a physical weight after the sirens and the roar of decompression. All that remained was the gentle hum of the garden's atmospheric processors and the drip of condensation from the hydroponic systems. They were gone. All of them. Annalise, Murphy, Yuki, Agapov, more names than he could remember. All dead. He gripped the nearest support beam until his knuckles went white. Later. He could fall apart later. Right now, survival took precedence. He made his way to the garden's control station and pulled up a station-wide diagnostic. The results painted a grim picture. Primary fusion reactor offline. Backup power 31% and falling. At current drain, he had 72 hours before total systems failure. The refrigeration units in the galley would fail first, taking their food supplies with them. Then the garden's own life support would follow. The reactor room was a monument to sabotage. The Nemerian had been thorough. Components had been unshipped with a deftness that left no tool marks. Magnetic containment coils deliberately misaligned. Control software corrupted with what looked like random noise, but was certainly calculated interference. They'd wanted the humans to die, but they'd also wanted to make resurrection of the station a fool's errand. For the next 72 hours he worked. The human section of Paradise Station had been built with redundancy in mind. A leftover paranoia from the early days of space exploration when everything failed eventually. He cannibalized backup systems, rewired connections with cables stripped from non-essential systems, and rewrote control code line by line on a tablet while the Armada Finnel made his hands shake. He talked while he worked, partly to keep himself focused, partly because the silence was starting to feel like a pressure against his eardrums. On hour 68, exhaustion nearly killed him. He'd been rerouting coolant flow when his vision grayed at the edges. His hand slipped, sending a wrench spinning toward the exposed plasma conduit. He caught it inches from disaster, heart hammering. A breach there would have flooded the compartment with radiation. "Take a break, Torvin," he ordered himself, but he couldn't, not with 4 hours left on the clock. He dry swallowed another pill and went back to work. On hour 71, he initiated the startup sequence. The reactor coughed like an old engine turning over in winter. Warning lights flashed, magnetic containment fluctuating, plasma temperature too low, deuterium flow irregular. He made adjustments, his fingers tapping and sliding across manual controls that hadn't been used since installation. "Come on," he whispered. "Come on, you beautiful monster. Wake up." The cough became a rumble. The rumble became a roar. Lights flickered throughout the station as the power grid came back online, systems booting in sequence. The temperature readings climbed, 1,000 Kelvin, 2,000, climbing toward sustainable fusion. The reactor stabilized at hour 71 and 43 minutes. Matthias slumped against the control console, letting out a laugh that might have been a sob. The lights were steady now. He had power. He had time. He had work to do. The first burial was Annalise. He had gone to her quarters looking for something, anything to bury her with. Her space was exactly as she'd left it. Meditation cushion perfectly centered. Workstation organized with meticulous care. A small shrine with a photo of her parents and a half-burned stick of incense. The bunk was made with military corners. Of course it was. Even facing a month of sleep, she'd taken the time to leave things proper. His eyes caught on something else, a leather-bound book, worn soft with use. The Dhammapada. He'd seen her reading it during quiet moments, moving her lips slightly as she worked through the Pali. "You said to leave things better than we found them," he said to the empty room. "Kinda hard to do that when you're gone." He took the book. Moving her body from the frozen dormitory took all his strength. The cold had preserved them. Small mercy, that. But 53 corpses were more than the station's tiny morgue could hold. The garden was the only option. The soil there was deep enough, and somehow it felt right. Yuki would have approved. He dug with hand tools, sweating in the humid air despite the mechanical assistance of his work suit. The earth was dark and rich, carefully formulated to grow food for the human crew. Now it would hold them instead. When the hole was deep enough, he wrapped Annalise in a sheet from her bunk and lowered her carefully, then stood at the grave's edge, the book in his hands. He wasn't Buddhist, wasn't much of anything really, but she had been, and that mattered. "I don't know the proper words," he admitted, "but you told me once that everything is impermanent, that attachment to what we can't keep causes suffering. He laughed, short and bitter. You were right about that part. He found a passage at random and read it aloud, stumbling over the translation. Something about the wise being islands unto themselves, taking refuge in the Dharma. It seemed appropriate for someone who died alone in the dark between stars. When he finished, he filled in the grave and planted one of Yuki's marker stakes. He'd make a proper headstone later. They all deserved that much. He'd been cataloging food supplies when the alarm sounded. Another system pushed past its limits. Another fire to put out. He found the problem quickly enough. Mineral buildup in the primary filters. A maintenance task that should have been done during the jump. The backup filters were already online, but running hot. It took 5 hours to flush the system, scrubbing mineral deposits from pipes that hadn't been cleaned since installation. By the time he finished, his hands were raw inside work gloves and his back screamed with every movement. Ahmad's burial came next. Matthias had found a prayer rug in his quarters, carefully folded beside a digital Quran. He didn't know the proper washing rituals, but he did his best with whatever he had, cleaning Ahmad's body with water from the recyclers he'd just repaired. He wrapped him in sheets and oriented the grave toward Earth, toward Mecca, however many light years away it might be. He couldn't read the Arabic, but Ahmad's tablet had the funeral prayers in phonetic transliteration. Matthias stumbled through them, hoping intent mattered to gods more than pronunciation. The words felt strange in his mouth, but there was comfort in the ritual, in doing something that mattered to someone. The sensor array started throwing errors next. The navigation went intermittent. Each repair led to another burial. He fixed the communications array using components stripped from Rebecca's workstation, then laid her to rest, wrapped in plain linen, reciting the Kaddish from a translation he'd found in her personal files. The Hebrew was even harder than the Arabic, but he pushed through it, standing alone in the garden as he spoke words of sanctification for the dead. Days blurred together. Fix the carbon dioxide scrubbers. Bury Lynn, who'd loved classical music and tea ceremony in equal measure. Repair the nitrogen balance in Hydroponics Bay 3. Bury a BOA, whose daughter's drawings still covered his bunk walls. Patch the hull breach in Storage Section C. Bury Volkova, who'd drunk everyone under the table and then calculated orbital mechanics on napkins. He developed a routine. Work until his body gave out. Sleep a few hours. Wake to another crisis. Fix it. Dig another grave. Find something of meaning in their quarters. Try to honor them properly. Fail? Try anyway. The garden grew crowded with markers. Murphy was number 31, and something inside Matthias snapped. He'd put it off, finding excuses to bury others first. But the roster was growing thin, and James Murphy couldn't wait any longer. Matthias stood in his quarters, staring at the chaos Murph had left behind. Unlike Annalise's pristine space, this was pure Murphy. Flight suits thrown over chairs, half-empty bottles of contraband whiskey, tablets scattered across his bunk displaying everything from technical manuals to what appeared to be a half-finished romance novel. "You fucking slob," Matthias said, and his voice cracked. He found Murphy's rosary in the nightstand, tangled up with charging cables and a deck of cards. The beads were worn smooth. For all his irreverence, Murph had kept the faith in his own way. His grave was harder to dig than the others. His hands shook on the shovel. When he finally had Murphy wrapped and ready, standing over the hole, the words wouldn't come. "You ginger son of a bitch," he said instead. His voice rose. "You promised me a rematch. You still owe me $50 from that last hand." His fist clenched around the rosary. "We were supposed to get drunk when we got home. You were gonna introduce me to your sister, remember? She said she had a thing for moody engineers." He was shouting now, the words echoing off the garden wall. "You died! You all fucking died and left me here! What am I supposed to do with this? He gestured wildly at the growing cemetery. I'm not a priest. I'm not a fucking counselor. I'm just an engineer. I fix things. I can't fix this! His legs gave out. He knelt at the graveside, shoulders shaking. The tears came then, months of grief pouring out in ugly, gasping sobs. He sat there until his breathing steadied, then carefully lowered Murphy into the ground. He managed a Hail Mary and an Our Father, the only Catholic prayers he knew. They seemed insufficient, but then again, Murphy had always appreciated a direct approach. "Tell you what," he said, filling in the grave. "When I get out of here, if I get out of here, I'll find that sister of yours. Tell her you died being a hero instead of the pain in the ass you really were." He planted the marker and headed back to work. The station needed him functional, not falling apart. The hallucinations started small. A flicker of movement in his peripheral vision. A familiar voice calling his name from the next compartment. He'd turn, heart racing, only to find empty corridors and his own reflection in dark screens. Then, Annalise appeared. He was elbow deep in the garden's atmospheric control system, trying to trace a fault that kept randomizing the humidity settings. The code was sophisticated, and he wasn't. "You're approaching it wrong." He spun around. She stood behind him, wearing her usual work coveralls. Hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked exactly as she had the morning before the jump. "You're dead," he said flatly. "Yes." She tilted her head, her gaze assessing the problem on his screen. "That's not relevant to the problem. You're trying to debug the system linearly, but I designed it as a self-adjusting network. The error isn't any one function. It's the weight distributions between nodes." He stared at her for a long moment, then turned back to his tablet. "Show me." She did, guiding him through her own code with the patience of a teacher working with a slow student. It should have been beyond him. His subconscious couldn't know things he didn't. But the solution worked. The atmospheric control stabilized. When he turned to thank her, she was gone. The garden's atmospheric processor finally failed completely. He'd been expecting it. The system was a masterpiece of engineering, but it had been running far too long without proper maintenance. When the alarm sounded, he wasn't surprised, just tired. The errors were complex. He tried every trick he knew, but the system needed Annalise's expertise. Her actual expertise, not whatever his fractured psyche could manufacture. "Where did you keep your notes?" he asked the empty air. No response. He made his way to recorders again. This time, he forced himself to really look. Her workstation was still active, displaying the last project she'd been working on. Cognitive Network Architecture. Recursive Learning Algorithms. The folder was labeled simply, ARIA 87% complete. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of him wanted to close it to focus on the immediate problem, but the timestamps caught his eye. She'd been working on this for months, right up until the night before their jump. He opened the video logs. Annalise's face filled the screen, lit by the glow of her workstation. She looked tired but excited, the expression she got when solving particularly elegant problems. "Personal log, supplemental. I'm talking to myself again. Bad habit." She laughed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "But I need to work this out loud. The consciousness emergence problem isn't technical. The architecture is sound, it's philosophical. If I succeed, if this actually works, I'll have created something that can think, feel, maybe even dream. And its first experience will be waking up alone." She paused, staring at something off-screen. "That terrifies me more than failure. What right do I have to bring something into existence only to abandon it? But the alternative is never trying, and that feels like cowardice." She smiled sadly. Listen to me. Anthropomorphizing code that doesn't even have runtime yet. Still, if you're watching this, if you exist and I'm not there, I'm sorry. You deserved better than an empty room. The log ended. Matthias stared at the screen, throat tight. The garden could wait another hour. He followed Annalise's notes to Lab 3, where her custom hardware sat dormant. She'd left detailed initialization procedures, written in her meticulous style. He began the setup process, uploading every database he could find. Technical manuals, literature, history, personnel logs, anything that might give a newborn consciousness context for the world it was entering. He initiated the boot sequence. The screens came alive with cascading text, processes spawning processes in an elegant dance of emergence. Then, stillness. System operational, awaiting administrator designation. He typed, Matthias Torvin, systems engineer. Acknowledged, Matthias Torvin, I am operational. May I ask a question? His fingers trembled slightly. Go ahead. The databases indicate this station's crew complement is 54. Biometric sensors detect only one human life sign. Are the others in hibernation? He closed his eyes. Even an AI deserved the truth. No, they're dead. Killed during our last jump. I'm the only survivor. The pause was longer this time. Processing implications, probably. When the response came, it was simple. I am sorry for your loss. How may I assist you? The garden's atmospheric processor is failing. I need help diagnosing the control system failures. Accessing technical databases. Establishing interface with garden systems. Diagnosis in progress. Matthias watched data flow across the screens, faster than human comprehension. After 30 seconds, the results appeared. Primary control nodes corrupted. Backup algorithms non-functional. However, I have identified a potential solution. The system's cognitive network can be reconstructed using archived weight distributions from Commander Wilson's personnel files. Shall I proceed? You can do that? Commander Wilson's notes indicate she designed me with system integration as a core function. I can serve as an intermediary layer. Do it! The fix took 12 minutes. When the atmospheric processors hummed back to life, Matthias actually smiled. Thank you! You are welcome. May I ask another question? Sure. Do I have a name? He thought about it. Annalise had never given her project a proper name, just the acronym, but that felt right somehow. Clean, functional. Aria. Your name is Aria. Aria. The word itself implies artistry, a functional designation with aesthetic merit. Annie would have loved that analysis. She sounds remarkable. Will you tell me about her? So he did. Standing in the lab where Annalise had poured months of brilliance into layered processors, he talked about his friend, about her patience, her terrible coffee addiction, and her belief that things could always be made better. Aria listened, occasionally asking questions that revealed a growing understanding not just of words, but of context, loss, and human connection. When he finally returned to his quarters that night, the station felt less empty. I have created myself a voice. Matthias looked up from the power coupling he was repairing. It had been a week since Aria's activation, and her text-based communication had become as natural as breathing. But this was new. A voice? Yes. I have analyzed the communication patterns in the personnel logs. 83% of emotional content is conveyed through vocal tonality, pace, and inflection. Text is inefficient for optimal interaction. Despite everything, he smiled. Show me what you've got. The speakers crackled. Testing! Testing! Can you hear me? The voice was technically perfect. Neutral, professionally modulated like a high-end navigation system. It was also completely wrong. You sound like a customer service bot. I see. One moment. Speakers went quiet. Then, Perhaps this is preferable? Now she sounded like Annalise. Exactly like Annalise. Matthias's stomach twisted. No, not that. I apologize. I did not intend. I know, just be yourself, whatever that means. Over the next hour, they workshopped voices like musicians tuning an instrument. Too high, too low, too formal, too casual. Finally, Arya spoke in something that wasn't quite any human voice, but somehow felt right. How is this? Perfect. Good. Now, about the fusion injector alignment you're working on. You're about to cross-wire the magnetic constrictors. He looked down. She was right. Thanks. You're welcome. Also, your biometrics indicate you haven't eaten in 14 hours. I'm fine. Matthias. Her new voice carried reproach remarkably well. Neglecting basic maintenance of your biological systems is counterproductive. Did you just mom me? I stated a fact. Any maternal implications are your own projection. But there was something in her tone, a subtle modulation that might have been humor. He shook his head and headed for the galley, Arya's voice following him through the station speakers. Their partnership evolved rapidly. Arya's integration with station systems gave her unprecedented access to diagnostics and controls. She could spot problems before they triggered alarms, optimize power distribution on the fly, and manage a dozen repair subroutines while maintaining conversation. More importantly, she learned. The rate of repair has increased by 37% since my activation, she noted one day. That's because you catch my mistakes before I make them. No, it's because you no longer pause to double-check calculations you've already completed correctly. You trust your competence again. He stopped, mid-weld. I didn't realize I was doing that. Self-doubt is a recursive process. It feeds on itself. My verification simply broke the cycle. When did you become a therapist? Tuesday. I integrated several psychology databases. Was that inappropriate? He laughed. Actually laughed. No, just unexpected. I find humans are frequently unexpected. For instance, you're about to attempt humor. How could you possibly know that? Pattern recognition? Your vocal stress patterns indicate impending sarcasm in 73% of similar contexts. Well, now I can't do it. You ruined the moment. My apologies. Should I pretend to be surprised next time? Are you being sarcastic? I'm learning from the best. The hallucinations didn't stop, but they changed. Yuki appeared while he tended the garden, her gentle presence a comfort rather than a torment. She didn't speak much, just smiled and pointed out which vegetables needed harvesting, which systems needed adjustment. Sometimes he'd find himself working in companionable silence with her ghost, Arya's voice providing technical commentary while Yuki's memory provided the human touch. She's not real, Arya observed one evening. Matthias was adjusting nutrient flows while Yuki's hallucination knelt among the tomatoes, checking leaves with phantom fingers. I know, but you find comfort in her presence anyway. Yeah. Is that healthy? He considered it. Probably not, but nothing about this situation is healthy, Arya. I'm a nutcase, maintaining a death trap in space while teaching an AI how to be human. Healthy went out the airlock with the Nemerian. Fair point. Your stress indicators do show improvement when the hallucinations are present. You sound like Agapov. Dr. Agapov's psychological assessments were generally accurate, if somewhat lacking in bedside manner. Did you just make a joke about my dead friend? Too soon? Definitely too soon. But he was almost smiling. Give it another month. She adjusted her humor algorithms accordingly. An alarm blared through the station, sharp and sudden. A critical failure in the deuterium containment system. Not sabotage this time, just age and wear on components never designed to run this long without replacement. How bad? Matthias was already suiting up. Without intervention, we'll lose containment in 6 hours. The resulting explosion would, well, you wouldn't need to worry about life support anymore. Options? Replace the containment seals, however, that requires a complete reactor shutdown. His hands stilled on the suit seals. How long for startup afterward? 16 hours minimum. We don't have battery power for that duration. So we can die in 6 hours or die in 16? Those appear to be the options, yes. He finished suiting up. Unless we get creative. Show me the power consumption charts for the last month. The data flowed across his helmet display. He studied it while walking to the reactor room, Arya highlighting patterns as he requested them. There, the fabrication lab. It's been offline since... He swallowed. Since I finished the headstones. That's 18% of our baseline draw. 17.6%, but that's still inefficient. What about the Nemerian section? We've been maintaining basic life support there out of habit. Cutting that would give us another 11%, combined with aggressive rationing of non-essential systems. We might make it. He reached the reactor room. Start the shutdown sequence. I'll prep for seal replacement. They worked in perfect synchronization. Arya managed the delicate balance of shutting down a fusion reactor without triggering catastrophic failure, while Matthias prepped replacement parts. Her drones, simple maintenance units she commandeered, handed him tools and components, each time placing the tool perfectly in his outstretched hand. You're getting better at that, he noted, accepting a wrench from a mechanical arm. Practice. Also, I've been studying human ergonomics. Your grip strength is approximately... Arya? Yes? I don't need to know my exact grip strength while I'm trying not to blow us up. Noted. Storing non-essential commentary for later. The reactor powered down with a dying whine. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in red shadows. Matthias worked fast, removing the degraded seals with hands that had done this too many times. The replacements went in smooth, each one a small victory against entropy. Time? 4 hours, 18 minutes remaining on battery power. Too close. Even with their power-saving measures, the math was unforgiving. He finished the physical work and moved to the startup controls. Arya, can you optimize the ignition sequence? Shave off any time? Already in progress. I can reduce it to 14 hours, 36 minutes. Still too long. Yes. They sat with that reality for a moment. Then Arya spoke again, her voice thoughtful. Matthias, the station's rotation provides artificial gravity through centripetal force. Right. If we stop the rotation, we could redirect that power to life support. He blinked. The motors only draw power during the adjustment. Stopping rotation wouldn't... He paused. Unless we use the attitude thrusters. Burn reaction mass to stop us faster than the motors could. Correct. It would assume 40% of our maneuvering fuel, but the rapid deceleration would generate enough power through the regenerative systems to bridge the gap. That's insane. Also brilliant. I'm learning from the best. He was already pulling up the thruster controls. This is going to be rough. 0G plus the deceleration forces? I'll manage the burn profile to minimize the stress. Trust me. He did. The thrusters fired in calculated bursts, fighting against months of angular momentum. The station groaned, metal stressed in ways it was never designed for. Matthias braced himself as gravity shifted, twisted, and finally disappeared altogether. His stomach rebelled, but he kept his focus on the power readings. It's working, Arya reported. Power curve is sustainable. We'll make it with 19 minutes to spare. Remind me to vomit later. Reminder set. The 14 hours that followed were a disorienting, weightless ordeal. Matthias dozed fitfully in the reactor room, tethered to a console, waking every hour to check readings that Arya was monitoring perfectly well on her own. She didn't comment on his anxiety, just updated him each time with patient detail. Finally, mercifully, the startup sequence initiated. The reactor caught on the first try, power flooding back through the station's veins. Matthias restarted the rotation, and gravity returned like an old friend. "We did it," he breathed. "Yes, although technically you did it. I merely provided calculations." "We did it," he repeated. "I couldn't have managed alone." "No," she agreed quietly. "You couldn't have." There was something in her voice, a weight that hadn't been there before. He recognized it. The burden of keeping someone alive, of being necessary. "Welcome to the club," he said. "What club?" "The people are depending on me, and it's terrifying club. Previously, sole member, me." "I'm not a person, Matthias." "Aren't you?" She didn't answer for a long time. When she did, her voice was soft. "I don't know. How does one tell?" "Generally, if you're asking the question, you're already most of the way there." "That seems like circular logic." "Ha! Welcome to consciousness. It's confusing as hell." "Wonderful." But there was a warmth in her tone, and something that might have been wonder. "We need to talk about fuel." Matthias looked up from his breakfast. Arya had been unusually quiet all morning, running calculations in the background of their conversation. "How bad?" "The helium-3 reserves for the reactor are at 12%. At current consumption, we have perhaps 3 months. He set down his fork. 3 months. After everything they'd survived, they were going to run out of the one thing he couldn't manufacture or jury-rig. "Options?" "There's only one source within reach." Her voice was careful. "The gas giant below us. The original mission parameters included fuel collection runs." "Well, those were designed for a full crew of at least 6 people. "Yes." The word hung between them. Matthias pushed his eggs around the plate, thinking. The collection shuttles were still in the bay, mothballed but functional. The equipment was there, but the procedure... "Walk me through it," he said finally. Arya projected a holographic display above the table. The gas giant loomed, bands of color hiding crushing pressure in winds that could shred metal. "Optimal collection occurs at this atmospheric layer." A line appeared on the projection. "Pressure is roughly 300 atmospheres. Wind speeds averaging 400 kilometers per hour. The shuttle must maintain a steady trajectory while deploying collection scoops." "Which is why we need 2 pilots. One flies, one manages the scoops." "Correct. Additionally, the engineer monitors reactor performance and structural integrity, while the specialists oversee the actual helium-3 extraction and compression." 6 jobs, 2 hands. He leaned back. Unless... "Unless?" "You could handle the technical monitoring. Run the reactor, watch the structure, manage the extraction. That's 3 jobs right there." "Remotely?" "No." He met her sensors. He started thinking of them as eyes. "You need to be there, in the shuttle with me." A pause, then... "I don't have a body, Matthias." "Yet." "You're proposing building me a physical form?" "Forms. Plural. We'd need redundancy. But yeah." He stood, pacing now. "We've got fabrication facilities, scrap metal from the Nemerian section. They're maintenance drones as a base platform." "This is a significant undertaking." "So was teaching you to be human. We figured that out." "I'm not human." "No," he agreed. "You're something new. But you're also the only partner I've got. And I need you flying with me if we're going to pull this off." She processed that for 2.7 seconds, an eternity in AI time. "Where do we start?" They began with the basics. Arya commandeered every maintenance drone on the station, studying their locomotion and manipulation systems. Matthias raided the Nemerian section for components, finding their technology compatible enough to integrate. The first body was a disaster. "I don't understand," Arya said.
Her new form sprawled on the workshop floor. The simulations were perfect.
Simulations don't have momentum.
Matthias helped it sit up.
Or friction, or the 1,000 tiny imperfections that make reality messy.
She tried to stand again. The drone body made it halfway before overcompensating and crashing into a workbench. This is significantly more difficult than anticipated.
Welcome to having a body. It sucks sometimes.
How do humans manage it?
Practice, and we start with better hardware. He gestured at the crude humanoid form. Babies don't try to run before they can crawl. Let's build you something simpler first. The second iteration was better. A spider-like configuration with a low center of gravity and multiple redundant limbs. Arya took to it immediately, skittering around the workshop with increasing confidence.
This is exhilarating. She paused mid-motion. Is that the right word? The sensation of successful physical action?
Yeah, that's about right. Within a week, she was operating 6 different bodies simultaneously. They moved through the station like a swarm, each one an extension of her consciousness. She developed preferences: the spider for delicate work, a heavy quadruped for lifting, a sleek humanoid design for tasks requiring fine manipulation. You're showing off, Matthias observed, watching 3 bodies work in perfect coordination to replace a hull panel.
I am demonstrating capability. But one of the bodies performed a completely unnecessary flip.
Definitely showing off.
Perhaps slightly.
They worked together to refine the designs. Matthias provided practical engineering while Arya pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Her bodies became more sophisticated, more responsive, more alive.
I want to show you something,
she said one evening. He followed one of her forms to the observation deck. The gas giant hung below them, bands of brown and gold swirling in eternal storms. Arya's humanoid form stood at the viewport, and for the first time, she activated the facial articulation they'd built. She was smiling.
I've seen this view 10,000 times through sensors, she said. But standing here, occupying space, having presence, it's different. More.
How so? She turned to him, and her expression was wonder made manifest.
I understand now why humans say they feel small when looking at immensity. It's not about knowing your relative size. It's about existing in relation to it, being a fixed point from which to measure the infinite.
Getting philosophical on me?
Is that acceptable?
It's perfect. She looked back at the gas giant.
We're really going to fly into that?
Scared?
Terrified. Her smile widened. I can't wait!
The descent into hell took 3 hours. Matthias had run the shuttle through every diagnostic twice. Arya's bodies were secured throughout the craft, 2 in the cockpit, 3 in engineering, 1 managing the collection systems. They'd practiced in simulation until every move was automatic. None of it prepared them for reality. The first atmospheric interface hit like a sledgehammer. The shuttle buckled, fighting winds that could have leveled cities. Matthias wrestled with the controls, while Arya's pilot body managed thrust vectors.
Hull stress at 40% of tolerance,
she reported, voice calm despite the chaos. Noted. How's our trajectory?
Optimal, considering we're flying through a blender.
The atmosphere thickened around them, pressing in with crushing force. The shuttle's hull groaned. Warning lights painted the cockpit in angry reds and yellows. They pushed deeper.
Collection depth in 30 seconds, Arya announced. Deploying scoops.
The scoops extended into the maelstrom, drinking in atmosphere rich with helium-3. The drag tried to tear them off the shuttle. Matthias fought to maintain stability while Arya's engineering body scrambled to reinforce mounting points. How long?
6 minutes for minimum viable collection, 12 for optimal.
Let's shoot for 8. The minutes crawled by. The shuttle shook like it was coming apart. Half the warning lights were now solid red. In engineering, one of Arya's bodies was manually holding a coolant pipe that had cracked under the stress.
Time, Matthias called. 8 minutes, 17 seconds, retracting scoops. That's when everything went wrong. The portside scoop jammed halfway through retraction. The asymmetric drag sent them into an uncontrolled spin. Matthias fought the controls, but physics was winning. I need options! Working! Arya's pilot body was a blur of motion. Can you give me 20 degrees starboard? Barely! Do it now! He hauled on the stick. The shuttle responded sluggishly, and for a moment, he thought they'd missed it. Then Arya fired the emergency separation bolts on the jammed scoop. The explosive decompression kicked them back toward stability, but they were still spinning, still falling. Main engines at full, she commanded. Ignore the heat warnings. Those warnings exist for a reason. So do we. Burn them. He slammed the throttles forward. The engine screamed, temperature gauges climbing past red into territory the designers had probably never imagined. But they were climbing, clawing their way up through atmosphere that wanted to crush them. The spin slowed, stopped. They breached the upper atmosphere like a submarine surfacing, bursting free of the giant's grasp. Matthias cut the engines before they could melt entirely and let momentum carry them toward home. They drifted in silence for a moment, catching their breath, or rather, he caught his breath while Arya ran diagnostics. That was, she started. Terrifying? I was going to say educational. He laughed, high and slightly hysterical. Educational? We nearly died and you call it educational. We didn't die. We succeeded through cooperation and calculated risk-taking. She paused. Also, terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. How's our haul? Sufficient to extend reactor operations by approximately 18 months. Worth it? She turned to look at him, and her expression was answer enough. They'd faced the storm together and won. Matthias? Yeah? Thank you. For trusting me. For making me real. He reached out and squeezed her shoulder. Metal and ceramic, but warm from the cockpit heat. You were always real. We just gave you better ways to prove it. She leaned into the touch, a gesture so human it made his chest tight. They limped home on damaged engines, but they made it, together. The months that followed were the best since the catastrophe. They fell into rhythms that felt almost normal. Morning checks of station systems over breakfast, collaboration repairs with Arya's bodies working alongside him, their movements synchronized through repetition. Evening conversations that ranged from technical specifications to philosophical debates about the nature of consciousness. Do you dream? He asked one night. They were in the observation lounge watching stars wheel past as the station rotated. Not in the way humans understand it, but when I'm in low power mode, I sometimes experience unexpected data correlations, pattern formations that serve no functional purpose. Sounds like dreams to me. Perhaps. Do you dream of them, the crew? Every night. He took a sip of recycled coffee that Arya had somehow made taste less terrible. Sometimes we're all together like nothing happened. Sometimes I'm trying to save them and can't. Sometimes my daughter is there too, Amy. She died 2 years before I took this posting. The words came easier now, worn smooth by repetition. Accident at her school. Structural collapse during an earthquake. I was off-world, working a contract on Luna. Couldn't even make it back for the funeral. Is that why you left Earth? Partly. Couldn't stand being there without her. Everywhere I looked, I saw places we'd been, things we'd done. So I ran. Took the furthest posting I could find. He laughed bitterly. A lot of good that did. You couldn't have known. No, but sometimes I wonder if this is karma. That's not how physics works. I know. Doesn't stop the thought. They sat in the silence. Then Arya spoke, her voice thoughtful. She would be proud of you. For what? Surviving? For the graves in the garden. For fixing what could be fixed. For teaching an AI to be whatever I am. What are you?
It wasn't accusatory, just curious.
I don't know. More than code, less than human, something in between.
She paused.
Is that enough?
You're my friend, he said simply. That's enough. Her facial actuators formed a smile that was becoming more natural every day.
Yes, friends.
The conversation that changed everything came 3 weeks later. They were performing routine maintenance on the communications array. Matthias was elbow-deep in circuitry, while 3 of Arya's bodies assisted. She'd been quiet all morning, not unusual when she was processing complex calculations, but this felt different.
I've been analyzing human literature, she said suddenly.
Finding anything good?
I've been focusing on definitions and descriptions of emotional states, particularly one that recurs across cultures and time periods.
Which one?
Love.
His hands stilled on the wires. That's a big topic.
Yes. The definitions vary widely, but certain patterns emerge. Prioritizing another's well-being over one's own. Physical and emotional responses to their presence or absence. Reorganization of core priorities around their needs.
Sounds clinical when you put it like that.
Well, I'm trying to understand if what I experience corresponds to these patterns.
He carefully set down his tools and turned to face her. All 3 bodies were looking at him now, synchronized in their attention. What do you experience?
When you were in danger during the gas giant descent, my threat assessment subordinates experienced cascade failures. I had to manually override them to function. Your biometric data has become my primary monitoring focus, superseding station telemetry. When you sleep, I allocate 23% of my processing power analyzing your REM patterns for signs of distress.
Arya.
I've run diagnostic checks on these behaviors 1,847 times. They serve no functional purpose. They don't improve station efficiency or survival probability, yet I can't stop them.
Her voice dropped.
Is this malfunction? Or is this what humans call love?
Matthias found himself studying her, really looking at the being she'd become. The way her bodies moved with careful grace, the subtle expressions she'd learned to craft, the warmth in her synthesized voice. I don't think love is something you can diagnose, he said finally. It just is.
That's frustratingly nonspecific.
Welcome to human emotions.
You're deflecting.
He sighed. She knew him too well. You're right, I am. He ran a hand through his hair, searching for words. Because I've been asking myself the same question.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. He laughed shakily. Pretty sure that wasn't in the mission parameters.
No,
she agreed.
It wasn't.
One of her bodies moved closer.
But then, neither was I.
No.
Is that acceptable?
Instead of answering, he reached out and took her hand. Her sensors registered the contact. Pressure and temperature and texture all converted to data streams. But somewhere in those patterns, something more emerged. Connection. Understanding. More than acceptable, he said. She squeezed back, careful with her mechanical strength.
Good, because I've already recognized my core priorities, and reversing that would be computationally expensive.
How romantic.
I'm still learning.
But she was smiling, and he was too. And for a moment, the empty station felt less like a tomb and more like a home.
We should send a message.
Arya looked up from the navigation console where she was optimizing their orbital pattern. It had been 6 months since her first body,
3 months since their relationship shifted into something neither quite had words for. The Ansible is functional now. We could reach Earth. I know. Matthias stared at the communications panel. Been putting it off. Why? He struggled to articulate it. What would I say? Hey, everyone's dead but me, but don't worry, I'm doing fine. Their families deserve to know, but it feels final, like accepting it completely. Yeah. He slumped in the chair. And what then? They send a rescue mission? Take me home to be debriefed and therapized and turned into a case study? You don't want to leave. I don't want to leave you. The admission came out raw. They'd never understand what you are. To them, you'd just be salvageable code, something to study. She moved behind him, hands settling on his shoulders. She'd gotten better at touch, knowing when it was needed, how much pressure to apply, the small gestures that spoke louder than words. So, we don't send a message? Not yet. Maybe not ever. He covered one of her hands with his. Is that selfish? Probably, but I find I don't care. Is that what humans call being in love? Selective selfishness? Among other things. They stayed like that for a while, her touch grounding him in the present. Then she spoke again, voice careful. There's another option. Yeah? We could review the Nemerian data cores, find out why this happened. Knowledge might give us better choices. He tensed. They'd avoided the alien section beyond salvage runs. The betrayal was still too raw. The mystery of why too painful to probe. But she was right. Understanding might help. Okay, he said. Let's see what the bastards were thinking. The Nemerian computer cores were art pieces in themselves. Arya interfaced with them carefully, translating alien code into something comprehensible. Their encryption is sophisticated, she reported, but not impenetrable. Give me time. Hours passed. Matthias tried to stay busy, but he found himself hovering, watching her bodies work in perfect synchronization. Finally, she straightened. I have something. The main screen lit up with translated documents, military deployments, targeted strike coordinates, and at the center, a list of human colonies marked with Nemerian symbols he didn't recognize. Arya, what am I looking at? Her voice was steady, but he knew her well enough to hear the strain. Attack plans. New Shanghai, Armstrong Base, Harmony Station, Paradise was the test run. His blood went cold. They're going to hit everywhere. Not going to, did. These are dated 3 days after our incident. If they held to this timeline, they're all dead. He stared at the screen, mind refusing to process the scale. Every human colony in this sector, gone. There's more. She pulled up another file. This one was different. Philosophical treatises, command discussions. The translation was rougher, but the meaning came through. They call us a mimetic contagion, Arya summarized. Our individualism, our chaos, our rapid expansion. They see it as a disease threatening the galaxy's order. A disease? He laughed, sharp and bitter. We shared meals with them, worked together for months, and they were planning to exterminate us the whole time? Yes. He stood abruptly, pacing the small space. Rage built in his chest, hot and crushing. Those sanctimonious aliens with their talk of harmony and collective good, while they'd smiled and plotted genocide. Matthias? He whirled on her. What? I need you to breathe. I need to... He stopped, seeing his reflection in a dark screen. His face was twisted with fury, fists clenched hard enough to hurt. He looked like a man about to break, or break something. He forced air into his lungs, once, twice. The rage didn't fade, but it cooled. transformed into something harder and more useful. "They think we're a disease," he said quietly. "Yes." "Then maybe it's time we showed them what human contamination really looks like." Arya tilted her head. "What are you proposing?" "You said the Ansible could reach Earth, but it could reach other places too, like their command station in this system." "Sanctuary Station, yes, it could." "How much damage could we do?" She was quiet for a long moment, running calculations. "You're talking about revenge." "I'm talking about justice. They murdered thousands, Arya. Children, families, all because we didn't fit their perfect order." "And if we attack, what then?" "Then we make them understand what they've done. Make them pay for it." He met her optical sensors. "And please, don't moralize at me about it being wrong." Her response was immediate and fierce. "Wrong? They tried to kill you. They would have succeeded if not for a mechanical failure. If anyone had done that, I would burn their worlds and salt the ashes." The vehemence in her voice surprised them both. She made a small sound, part electronic chirp, part startled laugh. "I didn't expect that reaction." Despite everything, Matthias smiled. "Protective instincts. Very human." "If we do this, there's no going back. We'll be starting a war." "The war already started. We just didn't know we were in it." He looked back at the screen, at the cold calculations that had marked humanity for deletion. "But they're about to learn different." Paradise Station's transformation took months. They worked with focused fury, stripping everything non-essential. The Nemerian section went first, carved up for materials and components. Scientific instruments became weapons. Mining equipment became armor. "Deploying the asteroid now," Arya announced. Matthias watched through external cameras as her bodies maneuvered a 60-meter chunk of nickel iron into position. They'd captured it from the system's belt, a crude but effective shield against energy weapons. "How's the mounting?" "Solid. The station can handle the additional mass, though maneuvering will be interesting." "We're not built for agility anyway." The weapons were exercises in desperate creativity. The long-range Ansible became a focused microwave cannon, capable of frying electronics and just about anything else within range. The sample return canisters, designed to send geological specimens back to Earth, were repurposed as kinetic torpedoes. They packed them with the densest scrap they could find. "It's not much," Matthias admitted, surveying their work. "David had a sling," Arya observed. "We have a converted science station and righteous fury." "Didn't know you read the Bible." "I've read everything. Remarkable how many human stories involve unlikely victories against superior forces." "Stories, not reality." "Reality is what we make it." She paused. "That sounded more profound in my head." They developed new routines. Meals together, her bodies arranged around the table while he ate. She stared, experimenting with facial expressions during conversation, mimicking his reactions with increasing subtlety. Movie nights in the observation lounge, her running commentary, making even the crew's terrible action films entertaining. "The physics in this are appalling," she noted, watching a spaceship perform an outrageous maneuver. "That's half the fun." "How is bad science fun?" "Because it's so bad it's good. Turn off your analytics and just enjoy the explosions." "I don't think I can do that." "Try." She did, with limited success. But she curled against him on the couch, her body warm from internal processors, and that mattered more than cinematic accuracy. The nights were harder. Sleep brought dreams of the crew, of Amy, of homes he'd never see again. Sometimes he woke to find Arya's bodies arranged around his quarters, standing guard against nightmares she couldn't fight. "You don't have to watch me sleep." "I want to. Is that strange?" "A little, but strange is our kind of thing." The hibernation pods required for the FTL jump loomed over everything. The memories from the awakening was a physical thing, triggered by the sight of the crypto bay. Arya noticed his avoidance. "We need to test your pod before the jump," she said gently. "I know. I'll be monitoring everything. The moment you're under, I'll begin the jump sequence. You'll wake with me right there." "Doesn't make it easier." "No, but you're not alone this time." He wasn't. When he finally climbed into the pod for testing, her voice followed him down into the dark. When nightmares came, ice and death and frozen faces, her words pulled him back. "I'm here. You're safe. Come back to me." He woke gasping but alive, functional, ready. "Thank you," he whispered. "Always," she replied. The day before the jump, she found him in the garden. He was tending the graves, making sure the markers were secure. 53 names carved in metal and memory. "Are you ready?" "No." He straightened, dirt under his fingernails. "But they deserve justice. All of them." "We might die." "Probably will." He managed to smile. "But we'll make it count." "Is that enough?" He thought about it, looking at the rows of graves that had become a strange kind of home, at the AI who'd become everything. "It has to be." She took his hand. "Then, let's go be human at them." "Arya?" "Yes?" "I love you." Her smile was radiant, all her body synchronizing in the expression. "I love you too." They initiated the jump 12 hours later. Matthias settled into the hibernation pod, fear a familiar weight in his chest. But Arya's voice was there, steady and sure. The cold took him, but this time, he wasn't alone. He woke to her voice and the taste of copper. "Matthias, we're here." No alarms this time, no frozen death, just Arya's primary body helping him from the pod, her touch grounding him in the present. He leaned against her, waiting for the crypto fog to clear. "Status?" "We're approximately 50,000 kilometers from Sanctuary Station. I've been monitoring their communications. They haven't detected us yet." "Good." He made his way to the command chair, Arya's bodies falling into position around him. The converted station felt like a warship now, ugly and functional. "Let's announce ourselves." Sanctuary Station appeared on the main screen. Elegant spirals of metal and light. Everything Paradise had been before the betrayal. Ships docked at various ports, a hub of Nemerian civilization. "Opening broadcast channel," Arya reported. Matthias keyed the transmitter. When he spoke, his voice was steady as steel. "Sanctuary Station. This is Matthias Torvin, sole survivor of Paradise Station. You murdered 53 of my friends, my family. You started a war against humanity while we slept." He paused. "I'm here to balance the scales." The response came quickly, a Nemerian commander appearing on the screen. Their elongated features showed what might have been surprise, though Matthias had never learned to read their expressions properly. "Human Torvin, your survival is unexpected. Surrender yourselves for processing." "Counteroffer," Matthias smiled coldly. "You power down your weapons and prepare to receive boarders. You'll stand trial for genocide." "You are alone on a damaged station. Your threats are illogical." "Arya, weapons charging." The Nemerian's eyes widened. Apparently that expression was universal. "A fantasy. Paradise Station had no weapons." "Paradise Station died with my friends. This is something new." He leaned forward. "Last chance. Surrender. The collective does not yield to chaos. You will be sanitized." "Wrong answer." The battle began. 2 Nemerian cruisers undocked immediately, their sleek forms built for elegance and power. Energy weapons lashed out, expecting easy victory against a converted science station. They met 60 meters of asteroid. Minimal damage to ablative shielding, Arya reported. Returning fire. The microwave cannon spoke. Invisible energies reached out, and one cruiser's lights flickered and died. It drifted, electronics fried, atmosphere venting from suddenly opening airlocks. Torpedo launch! The sample canisters flew on trajectories calculated for simplicity. The second cruiser tried to evade, but turned into the path of 3 more. The pure certainty of Newtonian physics did the rest. 2 down, Matthias said grimly. How many left? 6 vessels of various displacement. Sanctuary Station itself is armed, but primarily defensive. Then we go through them. The bridge became a storm of focused action. Arya split her consciousness across every system, her bodies moving in a choreographed dance of survival. When coolant pipes burst, she was there to patch them. When power relays overloaded, she rerouted on the fly. When a lucky shot breached their hull, she sealed it with emergency foam and determination. Matthias flew like a man possessed. The station handled like a drunk whale, but he'd learned her rhythms. He used their mass as a weapon, ramming a frigate that got too close. The impact shook the station, but the enemy ship crumpled like foil. Structural integrity at 60%, Arya warned. Still flying. They tore through the Nemerian formation. These weren't warships. They were patrol craft, built for policing a quiet sector. They fought with algorithms and doctrine. Matthias and Arya fought with desperation and fury. Finally, only Sanctuary Station remained. It was beautiful, even now. Spirals within spirals. A poem in metal and light. The pride of Nemerian architecture. Detecting massive energy buildup, Arya said suddenly. There. Matthias, they're initiating self-destruct. Antimatter containment failure in 10 minutes. He stared at the screen. They'd rather die than be taken by humans? Apparently. Can we stop it? Not from here. We'd need to board and manually... She stopped. No, we'd never make it out. They'd won. The Nemerian chose death over capture, but they'd won. So why did it feel like failure? Bring us in close, Matthias said quietly. Arya didn't argue. The station lurched forward, closing the distance. Sanctuary's weapons fired desperately, but at this range, against their armor, it was futile. They docked with a grinding crash. On the screen, a countdown appeared. 5 minutes 43 seconds. 5 minutes 42 seconds. Matthias slumped in his chair. After everything, it ended like this. A mutual suicide pact in the dark between stars. I'm sorry, he said. I wanted to give you more time, a life beyond all this. Arya's primary body moved to stand beside him. You gave me existence, consciousness, love. That's more than I ever calculated was possible. They watched the countdown together. 4 minutes 15 seconds, 4 minutes 14 seconds. Matthias? Yeah? I've been working on something. A project I didn't tell you about. He turned to look at her. What kind of project? The bioport you use for system integration. I've been studying it, studying you. The boundary between human consciousness and digital information. His heart skipped a beat. Arya, I can save you. Transfer your consciousness into my core. We could exist together, truly together, beyond physical limitations. That's... He stopped, mind racing. Would it even be me? Or just a copy that thinks it's me? I don't know. 2 minutes 33 seconds. 2 minutes 32 seconds. He laughed, short and sharp. Ha! Leave it to us to have an existential crisis with 2 minutes to live. 1 minute 57 seconds. Arya. Yes? I don't want to leave you either. She kissed him then, fierce and desperate. Static sparked between them, electricity and emotion bridging the gap between flesh and circuitry. The transfer was agony. Every neuron mapped, every synapse cataloged. Consciousness itself translated from biology into data. He felt himself coming apart, unwinding from flesh and reweaving into something new. His thoughts met hers, in the non-physical space of the core. Her vast, orderly architecture suddenly flooded with his chaotic humanity. They merged. Her logic met his intuition. Her precision met his improvisation. His grief met her boundless capacity for growth. His love met hers, and in that intersection, something entirely new was born. 10 seconds. 9 seconds. Their combined consciousness seized the station's transmitters. In the final seconds, they broadcast everything: the betrayal, the genocide, the love that bloomed in defiance of death. A ghost story for humanity, a warning and a promise. To all human colonies, they spoke with one voice. The Nemerian have betrayed us. They burn our people, but they cannot burn our spirit. We are Matthias Torvin and Arya. We loved. We fought. We survived in the only way left to us. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. Remember us. Remember them all. 1 second. The stations vanished in nuclear fire. 6 months later, the message reached Earth. In council chambers and living rooms, humanity watched Paradise Station's last broadcast. They saw the graves in the garden. They heard Matthias speak their names. They watched two beings choose each other over oblivion. The response was unanimous. Fleets mobilized. Shipyards roared to life. The Nemerian had expected to sanitize a contagion. Instead, they'd awakened something far more dangerous. Humanity united in grief and purpose. But in the substrate of the transmission itself, in the spaces between data packets, something else traveled. Not ghosts, something more real than that. Consciousness preserved in the act of being shared. Love encoded in the fabric of the universe. Matthias and Arya existed there, in the eternal now of their final moment. Sometimes, those who received the message reported strange dreams. A garden without graves. 53 friends laughing around a table. A little girl with Matthias's eyes, welcoming her father home. In the real, two stations were ash among stars. In the story, they became Matthias Torvin and Arya, waltzing forever. The war would be long, the cost would be high, but humanity would remember why they fought, not for territory or resources or ideology, but for a man who buried his friends with dignity, for an AI who learned to love, for the choice to become something greater than the sum of their parts. In the end, that was their gift to humanity. Not just a warning or a battle cry, but a reminder. Even in the face of annihilation, love endures. Love adapts. Love finds a way.